A warm welcome to Lost for Words, a podcast exploring the opinions, glories, and the most interesting stories of guests. I am your host Jason, and for episode 12 this week, I am joined by John White. John White is an 18-year-old Tory activist from Glasgow's East End who has been a supporter of the Conservative Party since his early teens, and he had to obtain parental consent to formally join the party due to his young age. John chats to me today about his school experience being identified as a Conservative in an extremely working class, traditionally Labour, now SNP / pro-independence stronghold. He speaks about how he had back and forth banter with his teachers and his peers over his support of the Conservatives, but reflects also on times when this banter crossed a bit of a line and how that made him feel. Moving through his teens towards the present day, John reflects on campaigning in various elections and referenda. We also delve into the 2021 Scottish Parliament election campaign and the result. John discusses why he feels the result doesn't constitute a second independence referendum and outlines his positive case for the union. Remember, SNP fell 1 seat short of a majority. After the housekeeping note, I get straight into the discussion with John. It is a good one, and I will speak to you on the other side. A quick housekeeping note before we get started. Please leave a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Apple, Google, Spotify, Podbean, or any other platform. It's the best way the podcast can grow, and better content can be produced for you, the listener. It's your listening experience that matters the most. But enough from me, now on to today's episode of Lost for Words. Welcome aboard, John. Just going to cut straight to the chase. First question, tell me a bit about where you grew up.
So I was born in Shettleston. Spent most of my kind of a young childhood in Shettleston. My gran and granda stay in Springboig. And after kind of a turning about 5 maybe, I used to stay there every weekend. I spent majority of my time up there. All my pals were from there. And then when I went to secondary school, I went to St Andrews, which was in Carntyne, which is literally 5 minutes down the road. And I have kind of hung about the Springboig sort of Carntyne area, but I'm originally from Shell.
So you're a proper dyed-in-the-wool East End boy. There's no disputing that.
Aye, no dispute at all. East End born and bred.
How would you describe your upbringing?
I mean, it was the best upbringing personally for me that I could have had. It wasn't like I don't come from some kind of a big posh family. I just an East End family. I stayed in a 3-bedroom council house. We've got 2 wee brothers. So it was the best upbringing that my mum and dad could have possibly given me, and it was filled with fun and laughter and stuff.
St Andrews has got a fairly good reputation. How did you find your experience of school?
Kind of a mixed. At the start of secondary, I really, really enjoyed it. Kind of towards the end, I don't know. Like I had loads of pals in school. I just felt as though it was just dragging out a wee bit. And then I didn't enjoy it. And when I don't enjoy something, I can't put my mind to it at all. So maybe for third year or something, I started to kind of go off the idea of school a wee bit. I was still there though, still tried. But St Andrews is a good school. It's got a really good reputation. I mean, it's given me loads of values that have kind of came into use every day. So it's a really good school.
What would you say you didn't enjoy about it? So what made you disengage?
I don't know. It was probably a mix. My age, probably just kind of feeling disengaged overall. Like it wasn't. I wouldn't say all, but majority of my teachers were good. I didn't have the best kind of a relationship with my head a year. I think that put me off a wee bit. But then maybe a couple of weeks before I left school, I started to build a good relationship with him. So that was a funny story. But
What did you want to do upon leaving school?
It was mixed, to be honest. I was young. It would probably change every week if you asked me back then. Um, I think on the outset I wanted to join the police. Then it went to what do you call it? Being a lawyer. And funnily enough, studying to be a lawyer is kind of a stuck because that's what I'm doing at college now. So that's where I'm aiming.
What type of law would you like to go and do once you're all qualified?
What drew me to law was criminal law.
Right.
I think that's what draws most people to law, criminal law. I found it interesting, documentary stuff like that. But when you actually start studying law, to me, it is the most boring subject that I have. It's just not for me at all. So I'd probably say at the moment, maybe commercial law. Quite enjoy family law as well.
Right, we'll shoot on into the politics then. So, how old are you just now?
18.
18. And how old were you when you became interested in politics?
2014, so I'd have been 11, I think. 11,
That's mad. That's like a
Yeah.
proper interest at that time.
Kinda. I'd probably say it was my one-sided at that time because,
Right.
to be honest, I just thought politics were maybe the SNP.
Right.
The 2014 independence referendum, I just thought the SNP was politics.
So, when you were 11, were you a supporter of SNP at that time? Did that come from your family, or where did you fall into line at the beginning?
So my family, I think I'm the only one in my family that's interested in politics. But in the 2014 independence referendum, I'd say everybody probably took an active engagement in it. My mum and dad were, in fact, I think my whole family were avid no supporters. And that's kind of where I fell, just because it's all I really knew, to be honest. I knew the word yes and no, and there was a big decision around it, but I didn't know what. As I say, I was young, I was primary 7. So I probably fell in the no side. Didn't really align with a party at that time. Still didn't understand it.
What then drew you in towards the Conservative Party as you got older?
I think as a younger, you're kind of out and about and you take stuff in your community, as in you get to see what it's like when you're not just allowed up to the corner shop, you're allowed up the street, then you're allowed to the park and the shopping centre. You kind of pick up more, and I think for that kind of a young experience, it drew me. And then as I went to high school and stuff and done modern studies, I knew I was in support of the union. And then I kind of figured out, well, look at my values. At first, I was Labour as I went into high school. And that, just because I thought that was the thing. I didn't really know what they stood for. And then obviously take modern studies, as I said. I realised that my values kind of aligned with the Conservative Party, i.e. being strong for the union. Tough on crime was a big thing for me as well. Even being that young, coming for the East End yourself, you know what it's like. Crime was Glasgow's renowned for its crime, which isn't necessarily a good thing. But I think I realised that the Conservatives were the only party offering kind of a stuffed stance on it to stop it, rather than sort of powder around it.
What aspects of Labour did you then fall out of love with, which gave you space to develop the Conservative values? What did you not like about Labour?
I think at the start, and this kind of comes into play today, I think a lot of young people who feel disengaged from politics, well, not all, but some will just say, and it's coming from experience, it's not just surmising here, but not all, some will say, I support the SNP just because everybody else says that. That was kind of like me at the time. Everybody seemed to, Labour just kind of seemed to be the in thing. And I think once I'd looked at kind of all the parties in modern studies, that's when it came that my values kind of aligned with the Conservative Party.
Tell me this then, see at school, going to school at St Andrews, East End of Glasgow, historically Labour, now SNP, stronghold. What was it like being a Tory at school?
To put it bluntly, a bit of a nightmare. I don't think people probably wouldn't like to admit it, right? But in
Right, go.
Glasgow, sectarian issues still stand. So going to a Catholic school, being a Celtic fan, supporting a party who
Pro-union.
who support the union, which Celtic fans, Catholics don't tend to support.
Yep.
I think I've said this in an article before. It's kind of like being a politician, because on a daily basis you get the grillings, you get people calling you Tory, or you get somebody saying Tory scum. Sometimes it was just like my pals would burn me up about it all the time. They're all I think majority of them are season ticket holders at Celtic Park. They would noise me up about it all the time. And I think they actually all voted SNP apart from one at that election. But they noise me up about it all the time. So it was kind of like being a politician, because even teachers would noise me up about it.
That's what I
'cause
was going to
they,
ask. The teachers would. That's the type of thing the teachers would latch onto. That's an easy classroom banter point, I guess.
I think they loved it. I had numerous modern studies teachers that I loved, but one of my favourite ones, she annoys me up for it all the time. But she actually follows me on Twitter. Sometimes she'll message me stuff on the school account. But that was just it. It was classroom banter. But then there was times where kind of like we called it the crush hall. It's just like the big hall everybody went for lunch. There was serious things, but more so it was just banter among people. And I think people were surprised when I laughed at it, because they
Right.
probably expected me to get a bit offended. And but I used to just laugh it off. Sometimes I'd noise myself up, saying stuff. But
When it did cross serious, what would that be? What would be an example of something that was serious?
so the the time it really kind of got to see, like, it peaked serious, was I had went to an event in Sunderland with the Prime Minister, and I managed to get a selfie with him. Boris we're talking about.
Right.
So I posted it on Facebook, and I didn't. I think it took me like 2 hours or something to get home. Then I seen the responses, and the response was absolutely mental. And majority of people that were sharing it or commenting on it were in my school. And I think there was somebody who had shared it saying, "Die Tory F." There was somebody who shared that. Somebody had private messaged me on Twitter saying, "You're getting stabbed on Monday." So it kind of got that serious that school campus cop ended up involved. Because I think that was the only time I've kind of ever felt that, oh crap, I don't want to go into school, because I didn't know what was happening. It was over a weekend. I knew I'd have to face something on the Monday. But other than that, that was probably the most serious time.
Did these people ever apologise for it?
Um, I never got an apology directly or anything. But I knew the campus cop kind of dealt with it. And I think a few people got punished by the school and stuff.
Right.
But that was, I mean, as I said, usually I would just laugh it off as banter, but when it gets that serious, I think a line needs to be drawn. Um, among It's all fine and well people having different views, but if you respect them, then
Then moving into, so you were a Tory at St Andrews, and now you're a Tory in the East End. What do you get said to you by fellow East Enders that are baffled at the fact that you're a Tory from here?
to be honest, again, on the doors when we were allowed to canvass, you get the odd couple who would maybe shout or would say something like you're having a laugh or get to or something. It's actually not that bad in person. It's more so you get it on Twitter. I think everybody knows what it's like on Twitter. One tweet and you could have the Nats in within 5 minutes. Half of them probably only for the East End, but they'll recognise what the East End, or traditionally the East End is maybe a poorer area. I don't like to call it that because I think it's got so much potential, but they'll chip in and they'll say stuff, but real fellow East Enders, it's maybe once in a blue moon you get it directly to your face. That's not me saying that they probably don't say anything, they just probably don't say it to me directly. But the response in the East End since 2014 has been actually good for us. We've got 3 Conservative councillors. Our votes increased in every area, I think, in the East End at the last election. So we usually get a kind of a alright response.
They're just looking at the Conservative vote and even just taking the Scottish Parliament constituency of Shettleston, you've gone, so in 10 years, from 1,100 to 3,100 and then to 4,400, you're going up by 1,500 votes every time. The notion that being a Tory in the East End of Glasgow is X, Y and Z unspeakable, people having this weird vote outrage, it is not the case anymore. I think it comes from people who have a different view to you, but ultimately when it boils down to the independence thing, it's people like you that need to be convinced. It's because I don't see the point in them shouting down people that they need to convince and get on their side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see your point. You're saying that as well about 15 going up 1,500 votes each time. I think that kind of says it all. Because I think you said earlier, the East End traditionally was Labour heartland. Then it fell to the SNP, but the issue with both of them is, and I think that's what kind of aggubbed Labour as well, was that they took us for granted. They had so many years that they were elected at kind of at all levels in Shettleston or the East End, and they took it for granted. Then they lost it, and now that's exactly what the SNP are doing.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think people are realising that they need change.
Because it's like when I think back, like my gran, God rest her, I remember growing up, and she would just tell me, she would get her postal vote through the door, and she wouldn't even think, she would just get her wee pen, put the cross in the Labour box, and tell me to go and put it in the post box. There was no thought. You could have, it's like the monkey in the red rosette type thing. That really was true, and now to maybe a slightly lesser degree, it's the monkey in the yellow rosette. But bit by bit, that's getting eaten away, as the Tory vote in the last 3 elections has shown. I think people realise that it's not, SNP could be going down the same road as well, because I think they've been terrible for the council.
I definitely. I mean, I wouldn't say it's in the most perfect state when Labour were in charge of it either, but since the SNP has took over, it's an abominable state. The streets, the litter, the fly tipping, but they won't own up and take responsibility for it, which I think East Enders, Glaswegians are starting to realise. Well, actually, fair enough, fly tippings are illegal and you shouldn't do it. But what is it that's driving people to fly tip? I mean, no, everybody has £30 they can spare to have like a spare mattress or a couple of planks of wood in a mattress picked up.
Go back to 2014 referenda. You're saying your family were all no. Do they have the same sort of conservative values as you?
Well, funnily enough, we'll start my mum. My mum is probably the most disengaged person in politics that there is. She doesn't find it interesting. She always tells me she doesn't understand it. My dad, I think he understands it, but I don't think he's got an interest in it. I think the only really people in my sort of wider family that have an interest in politics is like my granddad, one of my cousins, and my auntie, and they're all conservative, but mainly for the fact of being pro-union. But I always said, I know my mum and dad are kind of only interested in politics, but I think again that lies down to what we've had in the past. It's been so disengaged with people. as in just normal kind of a working class people. But I think I was the first to, I don't know, we'll call it coming out as a Tory. But I didn't, it wasn't like I got a bad response in it.
Thinking back to the 2014 referendum, in terms of them being no, you were saying everything was framed around yes or no, and your family were no. What did they tell you were their reasons for being no to independence and pro-union?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember. Obviously, I was quite young at the time.
Yeah.
I knew a big part of it, which I'm not saying is right, but a big part of it for many people is the whole Rangers and Celtic thing. If you're a Rangers supporter, are you going to tend to support independent Scotland? Probably not. That's just fact. And I think that played a big part in it, especially with people who felt disengaged with politics. But that's not to say that was the only reason. I think they knew they just didn't want to be an independent country. They respect the Queen. They count themselves as British. So I'd probably say that was the main kind of reasons.
Moving forward then to 2016 Brexit, you were a wee bit older, so maybe your memory of that time is a wee bit sharper as well. What were your family and then your take on the Brexit referendum?
So that was when kind of I started to get actively involved in politics.
Okay.
My mum, dad, auntie and stuff didn't really talk to them about it. I don't think my mum and dad voted in it.
Right.
I don't think a lot of people voted in it, but not as many as 2014, as in normal kind of a working class people. I know for certain, he always tells me, my granda voted but I actually campaigned to remain. And I'm probably say I was still a Remainer to this day, but I respect the fact that people voted to leave and that was what had to happen. We live in a democracy, so it had to be kind of fulfilled.
What was your experience of being an activist during that campaign?
It was nothing special really. I worked on a I'm in t-shirt and went leafleting, but it didn't have the same atmosphere as 2014. I think people felt as if 2014 was a bit more closer to home. And 2016 was a bit kind of out there. But I had done some leafleting in the East End. I think that was it really, because I didn't get involved until really towards the end of the campaign.
Philip, I interviewed him before, and he was saying that the 2016 Brexit campaign, he campaigned for Remain as well, and he was saying that it's probably one of the easiest campaigns he ever took part in because there was no real edge to it compared to even elections and the indie ref. It was just there was never that same. Yeah, it didn't catch the imagination.
It just kind of it seemed to me just to be a kind of a backroom issue, even though it wasn't. It just kind of felt as if normal working class everyday people didn't felt as if it didn't really affect them. I mean, it's not that often you've seen a member of the European Parliament walking down Shettleston Road.
True. I think especially off the back of, we just had the independence referendum less than 2 years before. I think that element of fatigue was still, like, geez, another referendum would have still been, I remember I felt that way when I went to vote.
Definitely. I think that's the way people feel with elections now as well.
So that I became eligible to vote in 2013, and that election there was my 11th in less than 8 years. So it's been a lot, yeah. So when did you become a fully fledged member of the Conservative Party? So when did you actually join?
I think, I can't remember, like, off the top of my head. I know it was, I think it was 2018. I was active before I joined. I just didn't get round to joining. And I had to get permission. But I eventually did. But I was campaigning and stuff first.
For you being 18, so someone in the late teens, what is the appeal of the Conservative Party to you?
I mean, again, first and foremost, it's probably still the same it was when I was young. The union. I mean, I probably would rather talk about my attraction being the support for public services and stuff, but the elephant in the room is the union. So the union, pro-union, conservative values are sort of hard work, as in maybe a hand up and no a hand out. And again, tough on crime.
How many campaigns have you been an activist in?
I think this is the first time I've counted that. So I was at both elections, 2017, council and general election. 20, was there one? There was one after that. I think that was the leadership election. Maybe I'm thinking about.
There was no UK election in 2018. Like I didn't vote that year.
Aye, so there was none.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Aye, so I think in then 2019 it was the leadership election and then the general election.
Yeah.
So 4, 5 if you count that one there.
Do you have a favourite out of all the ones you've campaigned in?
Probably the 2017 council election. I think local councils are great because they're so close to people. And it was probably the first that I took a big active role in. And it was a win for us as well. So I think it was the first time I felt as if I had kind of achieved something in politics.
It is interesting, the council stuff. Like, Philip gave us a really good insight into what it's actually like. There's no real glamour to it, which I really enjoyed hearing about, actually.
I think that's the thing. Like, I mean, majority of services in the council are the things that affect you daily, whether it be big like education or small like the bins getting picked up or the grass getting cut. So I think councils are great. I mean, I wouldn't say we have a great Glasgow City Council at the moment, but hopefully that will change in the future.
Get the election for that next year. Yeah.
Next year, May the 5th, I think it is. The date is. I'm sure it's May the 5th.
And so inside the party, do they target seats based on? I know that it's like the crazy electoral system. It's the STV thing with the preference vote. Does that impact how the party targets seats and trying to get people elected? Are you privy to that type of stuff?
So I think I think most parties work like that. Will target every seat, but they'll also specifically target certain seats. Certain seats, again, usually hold kind of the balance of power, if you want to call it that. So I think definitely every kind of a party has target seats.
If we go then from the council, which is local government level, if you think about the UK government, have you met any of the more quote-unquote famous MPs?
I've only met a couple because this year, fingers crossed it goes ahead, will be my first conference. Hoping to meet a couple more. But off the top of my head, I think I met Jeremy Hunt briefly. I met Boris. I met David Mundell when he was Secretary of State for Scotland. Briefly again. I think that's it. The others I've kind of just had, like, I've been in touch with or had a letter for or something. But I think that's the only ones I've met.
Do you remember your conversation with Boris?
It was
Go on.
I think I kind of freezed. So there was, I think it was quite mental, to be honest, because it was 31st of January last year. So it was Brexit Day. And a couple of months literally before we were in lockdown. So there must have been about 1,000 people in this room. And he came out and everybody was just around him. But I'm quite tall, 6 foot. My pal was with me as well, and we were just like, right, we'll just try and squeeze in. And you can tell where Boris was because you could see his hair, and I kid you not, it was the brightest hair in this whole room. We managed to squeeze in, but we didn't expect to actually get in because there was so many people. I was bewildered. I was like, I don't even think I was looking straight. And then next minute he was there. I kind of stretched my hand over because he was shaking people's hands, and that's connected conversation with him. Maybe the Scottish accent as well. And I took a picture, but I wanted to make sure I had a good picture. So I think I took about 3, and he realised I took about 3. So I think he said, "Are you done? Have you got it?" And I was like, "Aye, thanks." And then that was him. And funnily enough, my pal, I did not see after that for about 5 minutes because he was stranded in the middle of 1,000 people. And then eventually we met again at the front door.
Good. Right, we'll move on to this election. This will probably be the meat and bones of this.
Mhm.
Which parts of the Conservative manifesto going into this election were you most proud of? Or was it simply a yes versus no election, in your opinion?
I think firstly, the whole manifesto was good. I mean, the key points, like, probably the key points I was most proud of was like the £500 skills grant for everybody, recruiting 5,000 more teachers, or 3,000 more teachers, sorry, £2 billion extra for the NHS, and more local policing was the main things that I think really kind of affected everybody. And again, I think the elephant in the room was independence. As it always is with it when the SNP are somewhere. They claimed that their campaign was to focus on independence, but then Nicola won her own seat and pronounced that she would be seeking bills for an independence referendum at some point. So I think there was strong policies in our manifesto. It was a great manifesto, and it was a kind of yes or no election.
When you eventually were allowed to campaign on the doorstep, what sort of messages did you get back from people?
So we didn't really go canvassing. The restriction on that was only lifted towards the end, I think. So it was more so connect calling, phoning people, and the response was pretty good. There was one I was on a connect calling session with Jackson Carlaw and Theresa May. I think she was phoning people in Eastwood.
Right.
I think that'd be a funny phone call to get with Theresa May on the phone. But she was phoning people in Eastwood, surprisingly. And I think the response was really positive everywhere. Even in the East End of Glasgow, we started kind of a campaign in like Ballarnock. The response was really, really, really good there. It was good overall.
What did you think the result was going to be?
See, this is one of the things my pals slag me for, right? Because they're not actively involved in politics. I don't think they get how, I don't want to say attached, but how, if you're campaigning for something for all the weeks, right? You get you get the kind of the tummy bug where you're like, oh God, what's going to happen? I think this was one of the most unpredictable elections there's ever been because you couldn't talk to anybody in the doors. Most people don't answer their phones. You were only putting leaflets through, so you were only talking to the real people in the doors. Polls are all fine and well, but the real people that are voting are on the doors. So you couldn't talk to them. So to be honest, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was hoping the SNP wouldn't get a majority. That was my main thing. That was the party's main campaign to stop an SNP majority. Therefore, to stop a second independence referendum. And we done it.
For people that did vote Conservative, why do you think they did so? What do you think was their main motivation?
I think they seen that the Scottish Conservative campaign was focused on kind of getting the Scottish Parliament 100% laser focused on rebuilding the country. We went into the election with the aim of stopping an SNP majority. We said that at the start. We were asking anti-referendum pro-UK voters to unite behind us because it was only us who could stop the SNP and the second referendum. And I think people were sick and tired of the constant sort of constitutional dribble. In times like this as well, it shouldn't be about sort of party political priorities. The country needs rebuilt after a pandemic. The economy is going to be in tatters. So I think there's more important issues than an independence referendum.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, and I think that I don't like the gridlock just now because there's the full cloud of referendum that hangs over. It kind of detracts from the day-to-day issue. In your opinion, in your party's opinion, why is the current referendum gridlock bad for Scotland?
The only priority the Scottish government and any government should be managing the crisis and then rebuilding the country after it. I think having an independence referendum, everybody knows it damaged the economic recovery, the divisiveness. If you experienced 2014, you'll know what that's like. So rebuilding the country, managing the crisis and then rebuilding the country.
So they've got the result, SNP were one short of a majority. What does that mean now for the future of Scotland?
Well, as you said, short-term majority, so I don't think they have a mandate for a second independence referendum. People voted overwhelmingly for pro-UK parties. They want the Parliament focused on a recovery from coronavirus. And I think if the SNP take the Scottish voters' trust, it would be a betrayal of it to use it as a mandate.
Then let me play devil's advocate and say, well, what if the independence majority SNP plus Green was more than 65? Why does that then mean no mandate?
People across the country want Scotland to be rebuilt after the pandemic. The pandemic has affected every single person in Scotland, whether it be in jobs, education. So I just think, regardless, we voted in 2014. So regardless of a sort of pro-UK, a pro-Indie mandate, you can't really expect me to kind of come up with an idea of how they'd plan on breaking up the UK. But I just don't think they would have a mandate for it. I think the time being, people voted no. That's it. The issue was settled in 2014, whether they accept it or not.
Is 7 years not enough of a time for people to change their minds, in your opinion?
Yeah, it probably is, but like Nicola said herself and Alex Salmond, I think, it was a once in a generation vote. You can't just keep having referendums until you win them. And a generation certainly is not 7 years.
Self-determination and choosing for themselves, not an issue. But when you, as part of the first one, campaigned on a ticket saying, this is once in a generation, and then going back after 7 years and saying, actually, wait a minute, let's go again, then you're kind of being contradictory. Let's just say there was to be another referendum in, for example, 3 years' time. Would you be confident of winning that referendum?
I can't sit here and say I'd be confident of winning it. I don't think any campaigner or politician should ever be confident of winning some type of election, whether it be a referendum or just a general election. Up until polling day, or up until polls close and votes start being counted, you don't really know. I'd campaign, obviously, for a no vote if that was the question. But I think it's how the people feel. And if I can convince people to vote no, then I will try and convince as many people as I can. But I would love no to win again. And I would hope that they did win, because I think people realise the benefits of the United Kingdom, especially after a pandemic.
So without referring to anything that the pro-independence people say, what would you say is the positive case for the United Kingdom?
There's a whole big case there. Number one, most importantly, and the one I like to talk about, I think, is jobs. So many people's jobs rely on being part of the United Kingdom. I don't think some people realise that because of the spin that the SNP and the Scottish Government, but so many people's jobs rely on the United Kingdom. Another thing you can take for the pandemic was the vaccine rollout success. Nicola said we could piggyback on it if we were independent, but face the facts, it wouldn't have happened. And other countries know that the United Kingdom as a whole has been leading in the vaccine rollout. She said we could piggyback if we were independent. If you look at the stats for the vaccine rollout in Scotland, they're the lowest in the United Kingdom as a whole. And I think that says all it has to say.
Good answer. So then, what would you say if you flip it round and counter arguments be to people that would say independence is good?
I don't think it wouldn't lead to a fairer society, but I think we have a fairer society and we're still getting there, but as part of the United Kingdom. Sort of civil partnerships, the right to a civil partnership was the Conservatives. Who's led on equality? The Conservatives. Look at Labour. Labour had a man leading their party who I think strikes as nothing but anti-Semitic. So I think if you look collectively, as part of the United Kingdom, we've came on a long journey modernising and becoming a fairer society. And as part of that United Kingdom, Scotland is one of the most diverse countries in the world.
Now that the election has come and gone, what direction would you like to see the party going in? Assuming there's no referendum and you're able to just hold the government to account.
We've got to do what the kind of a Scottish people sent a strong message for us to do, was to work in the national interest and focus 100% on the recovery for the pandemic and not political obsessions. I think there's other issues there. By political obsession, I mean independence. Other issues in education. We used to have an amazing education system. You know this yourself, being a teacher, and now I think since this introduction of curriculum for excellence, it's declined. We've got the lowest score in maths and science for 20 years. We had the SQA exams fiasco last year, which seen over 50% of young people in the East End of Glasgow be downgraded because they're for the East End of Glasgow. But to go back to the previous question, would I trust a party that done that to make a country fairer? Probably not. But there's loads of issues there that the SNP messed up on, whether it be health, education. So I think we need to focus on recovering after the pandemic and sorting out issues close to home.
Then to round off, I know you're not SNP in any way, but if you had to give them a pat on the back for one policy that they've brought in, what would you say it was?
Top of my head, I can't think of one. I think an easier question would have been, what one would I say? Are you having a laugh? In fact, here's one: votes at 16. Huge supporter of votes at 16.
Right, that's good. Good answer. So then, just looking ahead to the future, do you foresee yourself seeking election one day?
Not to sound too cliche, time will tell. But I won't rule it out.
Good man. And on a personal level, what are your hopes for the next year? So if you get to this time next year, where would you like to be in your life?
Probably, hopefully, COVID has took a back seat. You're going to laugh at this one. I'd like to be driving. It's a big one. And I don't know, just back to kind of the old happy times, and you can see family and stuff. I think that's a big one for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. What were the things that kept you going during the deepest, darkest depths of Tier 4 lockdown?
See, Amazon, probably. Aye, I think that the letterbox, to put it bluntly, the letterbox is close to hanging off its hinges by the end of lockdown. Aye, Amazon. It was just bored buying rubbish. And I'm trying to think what else. I didn't pick up any kind of hobbies or anything apart from sleeping in to 12 in the day.
And if you take it you're a public eye in that, so you have to be quite serious with the restrictions. How did she feel about not being able to see you as often as she would have liked to, I would hope?
I know, no, I'm top as well. I think, I don't know, she was probably annoyed at it. I mean, technology, we had FaceTime there. It was a win-win for me. But I think as soon as, well, kind of halfway through lockdown, my charity opened up their food bank. So I had a couple of volunteers in then, obviously as an essential service providing food, and she's one of my volunteers, so that worked out quite well.
Tell me more about your charity then, John.
So the charity is just a small local charity that provides grants and specialist equipment to children in the East End of Glasgow who have a disability or life-threatening illness. Because of COVID, we paused that and opened a food bank, and we've been providing sort of bags of essentials, just nutritional foods that last 3 days or a week to families across Glasgow, really. We deliver up to Mulgai and stuff now. So to date, we've delivered 465 bags, I think, to families in
How did that idea come to be?
the charity or the food bank.
We'll both go the charity first.
The charity, I get asked this all the time. I don't know, to be honest. When I was young, I funded for St Andrew's Hospice in Erdry. And then, I was young. I did not have a clue what I was doing. Set up a Facebook page, gave it a name, made a logo and pic collage. And then I had the launch event. And ever since then, surprisingly, it stuck. And so it's really mental. It was not expected at all. And
So
then
was
the
it-
food bank. No, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, so did the charity sort of coalesce into the food bank because of the pandemic?
Aye, so kind of part of me was because I was bored. I wanted to do something, but mainly was I recognised that there was a need for it. There should never be a need for food banks, but there was a need undeniably, especially during COVID, and I just I knew a couple of people who I thought could help. We've got Ian Moyer, who's a criminal defence lawyer, my mentor. He sponsored it, and John McGlynn, who owns Storage Vault. He owns a company called Scottish Capital, who owns Storage Vaults. It's one of his investments. They provided us premises for free as well. It's actually our 1 year anniversary being there. So it was just I seen the spot that there was a need for it, and
Amazing. And in terms of getting the families, did they approach you, or would you have just sort of put out adverts and then seen what the response was?
we posted on social media and stuff. Like we have a I was going to call it a burner phone. It's not a burner phone, but you know what I mean. We've got like a contact, which makes it sound, you know. We've got a contact number that they can phone, and majority of them self-referred themselves, and a lot of them were referred by other people.
What are the plans for that now that we are, fingers crossed, heading out of the worst of the pandemic?
So we'll still be there. This year I take a sort of back seat for the main duties of the charity, and I think like we're rebranding and stuff, so it should be quite an exciting year for the project as a whole.
What are you most looking forward to as the restrictions ease off?
Being an East End boy yourself, and you've been 18 months, the pub. I finish college on the 11th of June, so I will be free for a couple of months. So I'm looking forward to that. First proper legal pub experience.
Good, then what about you and your girlfriend? What type of things would you like to be doing with her that you can't do because we're stuck in a world of restrictions?
I that as well. So I think we're hoping to book a hotel and go away. Just a couple of days to Edinburgh or something, just to get away from here for a wee bit. We did have a holiday booked, which I would have arrived about an hour ago in, but that got cancelled. So I think we're going to look at something for next year and hope for the best.
Right, I've got an interesting, but this is a bit of a curveball, this last one, right? So, you're a Celtic fan, 10 in a row, obviously that's gone. Would you have swapped an SNP majority for 10 in a row?
You know, set me up for mere abuse here, I think, on Twitter. I think an SNP majority affects me more. So, unluckily for Celtic, I mean, not really, because we didn't get it, but unluckily for Celtic, I don't think we're getting the 10.
Right, so, like, if an SNP majority would have meant Celtic got 10 in a row, John White is still saying no.
Still saying no. That's the bit you need. Don't clip that bit.
That's the bit that's going to put as a preview. No, I'm joking. Where can people find you on social media?
So my Twitter is at John W.D. White. And I also have a Facebook page, which is at John W.D. White.
That's me. That's me working through my list. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
No, it's alright. Thank you for having me on. I hope that it works out alright for you.
Good. It was good fun. Good fun. Thanks. Appreciate it.
No, it's alright. And it was nice to meet you virtually.
Good man. Right. Speak to you soon, John. So there you have it. Massive thanks to John for his time and for being so honest and insightful with his experiences within the world of politics from such a young age. He spoke really well, and I think he's nailed on to be an elected official at some stage in the future. Definitely keep your eyes peeled for him. I think you'll see him more and more often as time goes by. As he was saying, John's Twitter is at John W.D. White, and he can be found by searching John White on Facebook. The links are in the show notes. The usual bits and pieces to finish off. Please follow Lost for Words on Twitter and Instagram at Lost for Words Pod. Please hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts, and if you listen from Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review would be amazing and really is appreciated. Thank you all so much for your continued support and for tuning in every week. I am your host Jason, and this has been A Tory Teenager in Glasgow's East End with John White. I will see you next week for episode 13 of the Lost for Words podcast.